Donald Trump sees a struggling guard. His next move shocks the nation. Every night, dressed in his dark blue uniform, Jake Thompson stood silently in front of the towering government building. He was a security guard, a former soldier who had left the battlefield, but still carried the discipline and responsibility of a man trained for duty. As powerful figures passed by, he remained invisible, a shadow in the background, unnoticed and unacknowledged, until one night Donald Trump appeared. Their initial encounter was nothing more than a polite nod. But what happened next would alter Jake's fate in ways he could never have imagined. A challenge. He wasn't expecting a fleeting opportunity, a single decision that could pull him out of obscurity or push him deeper into the abyss of insignificance. What did Trump see in Jake? And what happened that left the entire nation in shock? The night shift was always the longest for Jake Thompson. He started his shift at 9 o'clock in the evening and didn't leave until the sun rose. The cold, endless hallways, the sound of his own footsteps echoing through the silence, the heavy locked doors sealing away the rooms where the nation's most critical decisions were made. Every night he patrolled every inch of the vast government building, ensuring its security. But he was just a guard, an unnamed protector in a place filled with people whose names shaped history. Jake had once been a soldier. He had served in the military for 8 years, surviving grueling deployments in the Middle East, but when he returned home, the world no longer looked the same. Soldiers like him, once hailed as heroes, had become mere footnotes in society, acknowledged in speeches, but forgotten in reality. No real job prospects, no opportunities to put his hard-earned skills to use. He had tried to move up in the security field, but no one was willing to give him a chance. His job allowed him to pay the bills, but it offered him no future. Every night he stood guard at the imposing gates, watching powerful individuals walk past him, stepping into meetings that he would never be part of. Every time he saluted a politician or a wealthy businessman, a thought lingered in his mind: if my life had taken a slightly different turn, could I have been one of them? But then, like every other night, Jake lowered his head, stayed in position, and carried on with his duty. He had no idea that just a few hours his life would take a turn he had never imagined. As the clock struck midnight, a convoy of sleek black vehicles rolled slowly into the building's courtyard. Headlights swept across the pavement, reflecting off the towering glass windows. Jake didn't need to look twice. He knew exactly who was arriving. The man had been here many times before, but never once had he acknowledged Jake's presence. Donald Trump stepped out of the car this time. He didn't just walk past like everyone else. He stopped, and he looked Jake straight in the eye. Jake stood at attention, his gaze steady. As the convoy pulled up to the front entrance, the car door swung open, and within seconds a team of Secret Service agents spread out, forming a protective perimeter. Then Donald Trump stepped out, dressed in a sharp black suit. His presence commanded attention. Confidence radiated from him. It was a look Jake had seen many times before. This wasn't the first time he had watched Trump walk into this building, but tonight something felt different. Jake remained in position, just as he always did when high-profile figures passed by. But as Trump approached the entrance, he suddenly stopped and turned toward him. "How's your night going, officer?" Jake hesitated for a fraction of a second. In all his years working here, no one of Trump's stature had ever asked him that. Every day powerful people walked past him, but he had never been a part of their world. He quickly composed himself. "All good, sir." Trump nodded, but didn't move on. Instead, he studied Jake for a long moment. His gaze was different. Not the detached glance of someone simply acknowledging protocol. There was something analytical, as if he saw something in Jake that even Jake himself hadn't recognized. "You served in the military, didn't you?" Jake was caught off guard. There were no visible signs indicating his past, no medals, no insignia, just his posture, his squared shoulders, the way he carried himself. That must have been what Trump noticed. "Yes, sir." 8 years in the Army. Trump nodded slowly, as if confirming the suspicion. He already had 8 years. That's a long time, and now you're here. Something about that question tightened in Jake's chest. He knew Trump wasn't belittling him, but saying out loud that after everything he had been through, he was just a security guard. "It wasn't easy. I handle security for this building, sir." Trump kept his sharp gaze on Jake. Then he let out a small smile, not condescending, but as if he had just discovered something interesting. "Tell me, do you think this building is truly secure?" Jake blinked. Was this a test? This wasn't a question most people would dare to answer. "I believe we do our best to keep it safe, sir." Trump tilted his head slightly. "Doing your best doesn't always mean it's enough. If you had the power to change the security system here, what would you do differently?" Jake fell silent for a moment. That was not an easy question. He had countless ideas about how the security system could be improved. The weak spots. He had noticed the vulnerabilities no one had addressed, but who was he to suggest changes? Yet at this very moment the man Standing before him wasn't just someone powerful, he was someone who was actually listening. "There are a few areas I believe could be improved." Sir Trump gave a slight, not annoying look in his eyes. "Good, I'll be back soon. When I want to hear your thoughts." Jake could hardly believe his ears. Did Trump just say what he thought he did? Did he actually want to hear his opinion, the opinion of an unremarkable security guard? Before Jake could even process what had happened, Trump had already stepped inside the building, leaving him standing there with a storm of questions racing through his mind. Was that just small talk? Or was he actually serious? For the first time in years, Jake felt like he wasn't invisible, and he knew this might be his one and only chance to prove himself. Jake couldn't stop thinking about his conversation with Trump. The words echoed in his mind for days. Was this really an opportunity, or just a passing remark? He wasn't sure, but there was one thing he did know: if he wasn't ready when the moment came, he might lose the only chance of his life. So every night after Jake stayed late, he quietly studied the building's security protocols, taking notes on weaknesses he had observed over time, blind spots in surveillance cameras, checkpoints that weren't as secure as they should be, access routes that could be exploited. He also dove into research on modern security technologies, brushing up on the latest advancements in threat detection, things he had once been trained in during his military service, but had never been able to apply. 3 weeks passed, then one evening Trump returned to the building. As he walked past Jake, he stopped. "Just like before, I told you to prepare some ideas, didn't I?" Jake took a deep breath, feeling the tension tighten in his chest. "Yes, sir." "Good, let's hear it." Jake was ready. He laid out the security vulnerabilities he had observed: weak spots that could be exploited, blind spots and surveillance coverage, and areas where security measures weren't as effective as they should be. He explained the improvements he believed could make the building safer. His voice was steady, each word chosen carefully. He knew he wouldn't get a second chance. Trump listened in silence. Behind him, a few Secret Service agents exchanged glances. No one had expected a regular security guard to deliver such sharp, well-thought-out analysis. When Jake finished, Trump nodded slowly. "I like the way you think." Before Jake could even react, Trump turned to one of his aides. "Set up a meeting. I want to see what he's capable of." Jake couldn't believe what he had just heard. A meeting? What did that even mean? But there was no time to process it, because that very night something happened, something that would throw him into a situation he had never anticipated. At exactly 2 a.m. as the building lay in silence, the alarm system suddenly blared to life on the security monitors. Red lights flashed. In a breach, unauthorized access. Security personnel rushed to the control room. On the monitors, a shadowy figure moved through a restricted area. No one knew how he had gotten in. The doors remained locked. There were no signs of forced entry. One of the senior officers spoke up. "Might be a system glitch." But Jake didn't buy it. His eyes stayed locked on the screen, a sinking feeling creeping into his gut. He recognized the location, where the intruder stood, one of the weak points he had identified in his report. Without hesitation, Jake grabbed the radio. "We have an intruder. I need a team to move toward the southwest corridor." Immediately, the others hesitated. Then a firm voice came from behind him. "Do as he says." Jake turned. Donald Trump stood at the doorway of the control room, his expression serious and unwavering. No one questioned the order. After that, within seconds, a tactical team moved in the direction Jake had pinpointed. When they arrived, everything appeared normal, until one of the agents spotted something unusual beneath the floor panel: a small device, a data interception tool, unauthorized surveillance. Jake held his breath. Someone had attempted to breach the building's security system, and if it hadn't been caught in time, the consequences could have been devastating. Trump slowly turned to Jake. "You see, I told you doing your best isn't always enough." Jake felt his heartbeat hammering in his chest. He had just proven his abilities, not through theories or speculation, but through real action. Trump studied him for a moment longer, then spoke words that Jake would never forget. "Tomorrow you're no longer a security guard. I have a new job for you." Jake was speechless, but he knew one thing for certain: tonight his life had changed forever. Jake sat alone in a small office tucked away in the corner of the building. Staring at the paper in front of him, it was an official notice from Trump's office, a temporary assignment as a security advisor, but along with it came a challenge. Within 1 week, Jake had to submit a comprehensive report analyzing the building's entire security system, every vulnerability, every weak spot, every solution to improve its defenses, and a realistic plan for execution. Jake didn't know whether to feel honored or overwhelmed. 1 week, a team of experts would take a month to complete a task like this, but he wasn't an expert. He was just a security guard. The guy who had been standing outside the door, a part of him wanted to quit before he even started. But then he remembered the way Trump had looked at him and said, "I have a new job for you." That wasn't an empty promise, it was a real opportunity. And if he let it slip away, he might never get another one. Jake stayed up late. Every night, he pored over building schematics, studied access control systems, and analyzed every surveillance Camera's blind spots, he reviewed old security reports searching for overlooked flaws, but no matter how hard he worked, he felt stuck. This wasn't the military, where everything followed a strict protocol. This was a far more complex system, one involving technology, politics, and unpredictable threats. By the fourth night, frustration had set in. Sitting alone in his office, he stared at the messy notes scattered across his desk. A wave of doubt washed over him. I don't have a cybersecurity degree. I've never been an advisor at this level. What am I even doing here? Just then the door swam open. Trump walked in alone, without his security detail. He glanced at the papers on Jake's desk before pulling out a chair and sitting across from him. How far have you gotten? Jake exhaled, pushing a few documents toward Trump. I've identified some weak points, but putting together a foolproof plan. I'm not sure I can do it, sir. Trump studied him for a moment, then leaned back in his chair. Do you know what separates a leader from everyone else? Jake remained silent. Trump continued, they don't need to have all the answers, they just need to know how to find them. Jake frowned slightly. What do you mean? You had a team in the military, didn't you, when you were out on the battlefield? Did you do everything alone? A realization hit Jake. He wasn't supposed to figure this out on his own. He could seek help. Trump stood up, giving Jake a firm pat on the shoulder before heading for the door. I didn't pick you because you have all the answers. I picked you because you know how to find them. 1 week is enough if you learn how to work smart. Jake sat there for a few moments after Trump left. For the first time, the weight on his shoulders didn't feel quite as heavy. This challenge wasn't about proving he knew everything, it was about proving he could lead. Jake stood in front of the towering government building. The icy night wind cutting through his uniform, a mix of anticipation and pride swirled inside him. He had just completed a full security report, something he never thought he'd have the chance to write. But was it good enough? Would Trump actually implement his recommendations? He wouldn't have time to find out. 1:47 a.m., the piercing sound of an alarm shattered the silence of the night. Red warning lights flashed across the security control room. Chaos erupted as night shift officers scrambled to check surveillance feeds. A frantic voice crackled through the radio. We have an unauthorized breach. West basement sector motion sensors just picked up movement. Jake sprinted into the control room, his eyes locking onto the security monitors. A shadow moved swiftly through a blind spot in the corridor. No broken locks, no shattered windows, and yet someone had made it. Inside, a nearby security officer spoke up. Could be a system glitch. We've had false alarms before, but Jake didn't believe in coincidences. In his security report, he had flagged a specific vulnerability in the west basement sector, an area staff rarely considered a risk. But what if someone else had discovered the same weakness before they had a chance to fix it? His grip tightened around the radio. I need a team to check the area immediately. No one moves without direct orders. The other officers exchanged uncertain glances, but then a firm voice cut through the tension from behind. Do as he says. Jake turned around. Trump stood at the doorway, his gaze cold and sharp. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't even surprised. He had the calm demeanor of a man who had seen far too many situations like this before. A tactical team quickly mobilized. Their footsteps echoed through the corridors as they moved toward the basement. Jake followed, his hand instinctively resting on the gun at his hip. For the first time since leaving the military, he felt the adrenaline surge through his veins. They arrived at the flagged sector. The emergency lights flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows along the walls. No sign of an intruder. The place was dead silent. One of the officers checked the entrance doors. No forced entry. Everything still locked. Jake wasn't convinced. He crouched down, inspecting the ground closely. A single footprint in the dust. Fresh. He signaled for the team to spread out, scanning every inch of the area. Then a voice rang out from the far side of the room. Over here, we've got something. They had found it, a small device discreetly attached to an electrical panel near the building's main server system. Jake's heart pounded. This wasn't just a break-in. Someone had planted this to extract data, or worse, to take control of the entire security network. Another officer stammered. How did they get in without being detected? Jake closed his eyes for a brief moment. The answer was painfully clear. They had exploited the very security gap he had flagged in his report. If he hadn't caught it in time, the building's entire security system could have been compromised right under their noses. Trump stepped forward, picking up the small device. He turned it over in his hands, examining it carefully before looking up at Jake. Looks like you were right. Jake wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a warning, but one thing was certain: this wasn't just a test anymore. This was real. Trump handed the device to a Secret Service agent, his expression sharper than ever. I want to know who did this, and I want to know now. Jake clenched his fists. He had worked so hard to prove himself worthy of this opportunity. But now it wasn't just about proving himself anymore. This was a real fight, and failure was not an option. Jake started this journey as an invisible security guard, a former soldier, standing quietly outside the gates of power. But in just a short time, through courage, determination, and sharp instincts, he proved that he was meant for something greater. He didn't need a title or a high-ranking position to prove his worth. All he needed was an opportunity. And when that opportunity came, he didn't back down. How many people out there are just like Jake, talented, hardworking, but never truly recognized how many dreams have been abandoned simply because no one was willing to listen. Jake's story isn't just about one man, it's a reminder that at some point each of us may stand before a defining moment, a moment where if we have the courage to seize it, our lives can change forever. And maybe the next person isn't Jake. Maybe it's you. If this story inspired you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced a moment that changed your life? Or are you still waiting for your chance to prove yourself? Don't forget to like this video if you found it meaningful and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more powerful stories like this. Thank you for being here with us, and remember, when opportunity knocks, don't hesitate to open the door.